I should have died that night, not from a bullet or a knife or poison in my drink. No, I should have died from pure embarrassment, because I walked into the wrong hotel room, and what I saw. My brain still doesn't believe it. There he was, not just a man, more like something made of shadows and danger. Sitting in a bathtub, a huge marble bathtub the size of a small pool. Steam was rising up. It smelled expensive, like rich people's perfume mixed with mystery. His body was covered in tattoos. They twisted around his muscles like dark snakes. And all around him were bubbles, tons of white, fluffy bubbles. It would have been romantic, except it was completely ridiculous, because this dangerous-looking guy was sipping red wine from a fancy crystal glass, like he was at a spa or on vacation. I froze in the doorway. My keycard had betrayed me, or maybe the universe just hated me. My suitcase bumped my leg, and all I could do was make this weird wheezing sound, like a broken accordion. His head turned. Slow. Scary. His eyes were black as midnight, and twice as dangerous. Then he smirked. Of course he smirked. Of course the crime boss taking a bubble bath would find this funny. I should have screamed. I should have said sorry and ran away. Instead, my mouth betrayed me. Nice bubbles. The silence that followed could have cut steel. My brain had officially left the building. I could already see my obituary. Local woman dies of stupidity after complimenting a criminal's bubbles. He set his glass down on the marble edge. Slow. Dramatic. He leaned forward a little. Water ran down his chest. And for a second I wondered if the steam was from the bath, or from the way my entire body felt like it was on fire. He said one word. Stay. And my legs, those traitors, obeyed. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing me inside the madness. I tried to rally. To save some piece of my dignity. Maybe I could laugh it off, pretend I was hotel staff checking the pipes, or a confused guest on the wrong floor. But no excuse seemed good enough. Not when he kept staring at me like I was entertainment brought in just for him. I stammered something about room numbers, about how mine was probably down the hall, about how I really, truly didn't mean to walk in on his naked majesty mid-soak. My words got all tangled up. I sounded like I was choking on air. He leaned back. The water rippled around him. A hunter who just cornered his prey. And then, with the confidence of a man who knew exactly who he was, he said something insane. I suppose fate has delivered you to me? Excuse me? I croaked, though it came out more like a squeak. He laughed. Low, dangerous, but definitely amused. I realized then that he wasn't just any crime boss. He was the kind mothers warn their daughters about. The kind who could end you with a look, but preferred to toy with you first. The kind who looked devastatingly handsome, even surrounded by floating soap bubbles. My instinct screamed at me to leave. My pride told me to run. My dignity. Already dead. And yet, for reasons I can't explain, I stayed frozen, staring at him like some mesmerized idiot. It wasn't just his body. Though, God help me, it was unfairly perfect. It was the way he carried himself, like the entire world bent to his will. And maybe in that moment, it did. Because I, the woman who just wanted to check into her normal hotel room, was suddenly tangled in something extraordinary, and stupid, and reckless. He gestured lazily with his hand, the way a king might wave at a servant. Sit. I looked around. The only chair in the room was ridiculous, antique, gold-covered, and placed by the window. I stumbled toward it, clutching my suitcase like a lifeline. My brain screamed to fight back, to resist, but my body betrayed me again. I sat. The bubbles popped softly in the silence, and I realized with horror that I was now a captive audience to the most bizarre show of my life. He watched me, eyes glinting with something I couldn't read. "What's your name?" It felt less like a question and more like a command. I should have lied. I should have said something fake, something forgettable. Instead, I gave him my real name, because apparently I'd lost all control of my brain. He repeated it slowly, rolling it over his tongue like fine wine, and then he smirked again. "You have terrible luck." My heart hammered. Why? Because now, you belong to me. The craziness of it should have made me laugh. A crime boss declaring ownership over a stranger he met while half buried in lavender foam. It was insane. It was theatrical. It was chaos wrapped in a towel. But the way he said it. Calm. Certain. Final. It got stuck in my chest. I swallowed hard, wishing the earth would swallow me whole. This wasn't just a wrong door. This was the beginning of disaster. I laughed, not because it was funny, not because it made sense. I laughed because my brain had officially gone rogue and decided hysteria was my only survival option. The sound cracked out of me, sharp, brittle, like broken glass. "You belong to me." Who even says that? What century was this man living in? Did he think he was some medieval king collecting peasants? The bubbles gurgled in the silence, mocking me. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He just tilted his head slightly, watching me unravel, like I was the main attraction at his private circus. I shook my head, gripping my suitcase so hard the handle cut into my palm. "Listen, Mr. Bathtub Boss. I don't belong to anyone. I came here to check into my room, eat overpriced mini bar chocolate, and cry about my life in peace. That's all." His lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. "Bathtub Boss." He repeated it like he was testing how it sounded. I wanted to throw myself out the window. The worst part? He was enjoying this. My panic, my anger, my embarrassment. All of it was entertainment to him. A crime boss bathing in lavender bubbles, sipping wine, and casually claiming ownership over me like it was Tuesday. He gestured toward the wine bottle on a tray beside the tub. "Pour yourself a glass." "Excuse me?" "Do it." I opened my mouth to protest, to remind him that I had rights and boundaries. And absolutely no desire to drink bathtub-adjacent wine. But something about the way his eyes narrowed made my spine lock up. Against my better judgment, I found myself crossing the room, like a robot with no control. The wine bottle was heavy. The label written in French I couldn't pronounce. I poured a glass with shaking hands, splashing some onto the marble floor. Smooth. Real smooth. I handed it to him, trying not to stare at the water sliding down his chest as he reached for it. He took a sip, then nodded toward the chair again. "Sit." I dropped into it with a thud, fuming. My pride was curled up in a corner, crying. He studied me for a long moment, swirling the wine. "You're not from here." "No tourist, business trip," I said quickly, too quickly. The lie tangled with the truth. Yes. I was technically here for a work conference, but that didn't explain why I was standing in the lair of a man who probably had bodies buried under this hotel. His gaze sharpened. "What kind of business?" "The boring kind," I snapped. "The kind that involves PowerPoints and free pens and people who use words like synergy way too much. Not crime, if that's what you're fishing for." For the first time, he actually laughed, a real laugh. Low and rough, bubbling up from his chest. The sound did dangerous things to my insides, and I hated myself for noticing. I shifted in the chair, heat crawling up my neck. "Look, I'll leave, okay? I'll walk out that door and forget I ever saw you drowning in foam like some criminal rubber duck." His eyes gleamed. "You won't forget." "Oh, fantastic. The drama, the confidence. Who even talks like this? Was there a secret crime boss handbook full of ridiculous lines to say in bubble baths? I rubbed my temples, already spiraling. This was supposed to be a simple business trip, a simple hotel stay. But no. The universe decided to throw me into the arms, well, into the bubbles, of a crime boss with a flair for drama. And then, as if things weren't already spiraling out of control, there was a knock at the door. My blood turned to ice. The boss didn't move. He just stared at me, calm as if we weren't seconds away from discovery. "Open it." I blinked. "What? You heard me? Absolutely not. What if it's the police, or your enemies, or worse, room service with extra towels?" He leaned forward, droplets sliding off his tattoos, and his voice dropped to something deadly. "Open the door." I wanted to scream, but my feet betrayed me again. I shuffled to the door and cracked it open, heart pounding like a drum. Standing there was a man in a black suit, sunglasses indoors like some discount spy movie. He handed me a silver tray with another bottle of wine and a covered dish. "Compliments of the chef," he said flatly, then walked away. I closed the door, trembling, and turned back. The boss raised an eyebrow, as if to say, "See? No big deal." I set the tray down, snapping. "Do all your meals get delivered mid-bath, or is this just a special occasion?" He smirked, lifting the dish lid. Steam rose, carrying the scent of perfectly cooked steak. He stabbed a piece with the provided fork and held it out to me. "Eat." "Excuse me? You're my guest. Eat." The nerve, the audacity, the sheer insanity of this man. I should have refused. I should have run screaming down the hall. But instead, against every fiber of my dignity, I leaned forward and took a bite of crime boss bath steak, and it was delicious. He watched me chew like he was studying a rare animal. When I swallowed, I caught the flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "This is insane," I muttered. "You're insane, maybe," he said softly. "But you're still here." And that was the moment I realized the terrifying truth. I wasn't just trapped in his hotel suite. I was trapped in his orbit. I tried to tell myself it was temporary, that I would eat the crime boss bath steak, nod politely, then escape back into the hallway. Find my actual room and pretend this never happened. But the universe had other plans, because the man in the tub wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. He finished his wine and set the glass down with movie star elegance. His hand slid lazily across the surface of the water, and for a horrifying second, I thought he was going to invite me in. My soul prepared to leave my body. Instead, he leaned back. Eyes locked on mine. "Tell me, what were you running from when you walked through my door?" My stomach dropped. I wasn't running from anything, unless you count bad life choices and the trauma of my last office party. But the way he said it, like he already knew the answer, like he could peel me open with his gaze, it rattled me. I wasn't running. I snapped. It was a mistake. Wrong keycard. Wrong room. Wrong everything. He smirked. There are no mistakes. Only destiny. I wanted to fling the steak knife at him. Instead, I muttered, "You sound like a fortune cookie." His laughter filled the room again, dark and rich, and I hated the way it curled into my bloodstream. This was bad. This was dangerous. This was exactly how people disappeared in the news. Woman last seen entering 5-star hotel, possibly devoured by bubbles and bad decisions. I pushed to my feet. "All right, bathtub boss. This has been fun. 5 stars. Excellent bubbles. But I'm leaving." I grabbed my suitcase and turned toward the door. But his voice cut through the air like a blade. "If you walk out, you'll regret it." I froze. Slowly, I turned back. "Excuse me?" His gaze sharpened. "You opened that door for a reason. You belong to me now." I threw my hands up, again with the medieval nonsense. "What is this? The 1500s? Do you have a castle? Somewhere where you collect women who can't work hotel key cards?" He tilted his head, lips twitching. Maybe. My jaw dropped. Was he joking? Was he serious? The worst part was I couldn't tell. This man lived on the edge between comedy and threat, and it was driving me insane. I tried again. "Look, I'll walk out of here. You'll forget my face, and we'll go our separate ways. You can go back to your bubble kingdom or whatever this is, and I can go back to my boring life." But he didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, he picked up the second fork from the tray and stabbed another piece of steak. He held it out again, eyebrows raised in expectation. My stomach betrayed me with an audible growl. I wanted to scream. Instead, I marched back, snatched the fork, and shoved the steak into my mouth out of pure spite. He smiled like he'd won something. I chewed aggressively, glaring. "Stop looking at me like that." "Like what?" he asked, the smirk widening. "Like you're planning something." Maybe I am. The way he said it made my skin prickle. I dropped the fork with a clatter and straightened, determined to reclaim some control. "Fine. You want to play games? I'll play. But let's make something clear. I'm not some wide-eyed innocent here to swoon over your tattoos and your crime boss smirk." He raised an eyebrow. "Aren't you?" I sputtered. "No, absolutely not. I have self-respect. I have dignity. You ate my steak," he pointed out. I wanted to fling the entire tray at his smug, bubble-drenched head. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Saved by the bell, I thought, fumbling for it. The screen lit up with my coworker's name. The coworker who was currently expecting me at the conference welcome dinner downstairs. Panic surged. How was I supposed to explain that I was trapped in a crime boss's bubble spa nightmare? I hit decline, shoving the phone away. No one could know about this. No one. The boss noticed. Of course he noticed everything. "Someone waiting for you?" "None of your business," I snapped. His smile darkened, twisting into something predatory. "Everything about you is my business now." I swallowed hard, my heartbeat pounding like a drum. This was spiraling fast. I needed an exit strategy. So I did what any rational woman would do. I lunged for the door. My suitcase banged against my leg, the wheels screeching across the marble. My hand reached for the handle. Freedom. Sweet freedom. And then a voice froze me in place. "Try it, and see what happens." I turned, and for the first time, he wasn't smirking. His eyes burned with something darker, something that whispered danger in a language my bones understood. I let go of the handle. The room seemed to shrink, the air thickening with his presence. And in that moment, I realized the terrifying truth. I wasn't a guest. I was a prisoner. And worse, a part of me wasn't entirely sure I wanted to escape. The silence weighed heavy, like the whole room had leaned in to listen. The only sound was the faint fizz of the bathwater, and the embarrassing squeak of my suitcase wheels, still tilted at an awkward angle. My grand escape attempt had failed spectacularly, and now I stood halfway between freedom and captivity, caught in the gravity of a man who looked like sin, sculpted into marble in confidence. He gestured lazily with one dripping hand. "Put the suitcase down." I clutched it tighter, as if luggage could shield me from crime boss insanity. "No." His eyes narrowed. I doubled down, heart thundering. "Absolutely not. This is my suitcase, my last connection, to a world where people don't casually declare strangers their property while bathing in fancy foam." For the first time, he moved with real intent. He rose from the bath. I yelped, turning violently toward the wall. Because, good Lord, There are limits to what my eyes can handle in one night. Behind me, I heard the sound of water dripping, feet against marble, and the faint rustle of a towel being snatched. My entire body went stiff, like prey pretending to be invisible in front of a hunter. A towel brushed past my peripheral vision. His voice came closer, low and maddeningly calm. "Look at me." I squeezed my eyes shut tighter. "Absolutely not." He chuckled, and I swear it rolled through the room like thunder. "Stubborn, aren't you? Better than obedient," I shot back, though it sounded weak even to me. The air shifted, heavy with heat and danger. I felt him near me without touching, a shadow hovering just close enough to press against my skin. And then, to my horror, he leaned closer and whispered, "Obedience can be taught." My knees almost buckled, not because I was swooning. Absolutely not. I would rather swallow my suitcase whole, but because my nervous system short-circuited like a broken toaster. I spun around, shoving my suitcase between us like a barrier. "Enough. I don't care if you're some bubble-drenched crime king or the patron saint of bath time. I am leaving." His smirk returned, infuriatingly calm. "You won't." I opened my mouth to scream, but before a single sound came out, my stomach betrayed me again. Loudly. It was the kind of growl that echoed across the marble and through eternity, the kind that said, "Congratulations, you are now the world's hungriest hostage." The boss blinked, and then, unbelievably, he laughed. Not his usual sinister chuckle. Not the low, dangerous hum. No, this time he full-on laughed, head thrown back, towel barely clinging to his waist. The ridiculousness of it hit him too, apparently. And I stood there, humiliated. Stomach betraying me while he looked like a god dropped into a comedy skit. He walked past me, dripping water as he went, and uncovered the silver tray again. Another steak, untouched. He stabbed it with a fork, carried it over, and shoved it toward me like he was feeding a stray cat. "Eat. That's your solution? Kidnap a woman, threaten her existence, then hand-feed her prime steak like some deranged food delivery service." He arched an eyebrow. "Do you prefer hunger?" My stomach howled again, louder this time. Traitor. I grabbed the fork, shoved the steak into my mouth, and chewed aggressively. If I was going to die here, at least I'd die well-fed. He watched, satisfied, then poured another glass of wine and set it in front of me. "Drink." "You know," I grumbled, stabbing another piece of steak. "This isn't how normal people introduce themselves. Normal people shake hands. They don't bubble bath kidnap each other." He sat across from me now, towel draped carelessly around his waist, like modesty was an optional accessory. "Normal people are boring. You're insane." He smirked. "Possibly." And just like that, the absurd rhythm settled in. Him feeding me food like a crime hostage dinner date. Me glaring and chewing and wishing the floor would swallow me whole. It was chaos. It was surreal. And worst of all, it was starting to feel like some twisted routine. Halfway through the steak, my phone buzzed again. Same coworker. Panic jolted through me. He glanced at the phone, then back at me. "Answer it." "No way." "Do it." "And say what?" "Hey, sorry I missed the appetizers, I'm being held. Hostage by a towel-clad crime boss who won't stop feeding me. Steak." His eyes glittered with amusement. Something like that. I buried the phone in my pocket and scowled. He leaned back, satisfied, if even my defiance was part of his game. "You're not going anywhere," he said, softly. "Not tonight." I stabbed the last piece of steak, shoved it in my mouth, and muttered, "We'll see about that." But deep down, I knew the truth. The hotel room door had closed hours ago, and with it, so had my chance at normal. I wasn't just in the wrong place. I was in his world now. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I played along long enough, he'd get bored, feed me steak, force wine into my hand, smirk like a man who knew the world was his playground. Eventually, he'd grow tired of my existence and dismiss me like an annoying fly wrong, because just when I finished chewing the last bite and preparing to fake a dramatic faint so I could crawl to the exit, sharp knock rattled the door. Both of us froze. His gaze slid to mine. Stay silent. Oh, perfect. Because silence was definitely my strong suit. My lungs immediately forgot how to function, and all I could think was, this is it. This is the police. Or worse. My coworker, armed with a conference badge and way too much enthusiasm, here to drag me down to the buffet. The knock came again. Louder. Without a word. He moved across the room, towel knotted with alarming confidence, and opened the door. I couldn't see who was there from my chair, but I heard a voice chirp. Evening. Boss. Special delivery from the casino downstairs. They said it's the deluxe surprise package. I blinked. Casino surprise package? What kind of crime boss Amazon nonsense was this? Then two men shuffled into the room, hauling a massive cardboard box between them. The thing was taller than me, plastered, with red tape and labels in Italian. They set it down with a thud and hurried out without even looking at me. The crime. Boss shut the door and turned back, expression unreadable. I pointed at the box, heart still, racing. Please tell me that's a giant pizza. He didn't answer. Instead, he ripped the tape with his bare hands. Because of course scissors were for peasants, and pried the box open. What emerged was not a pizza, it was a golden cage. Shot to my feet so fast my chair screeched across the marble. Oh, absolutely not. I don't care what kind of twisted bird enthusiast nonsense this is. His smirk widened as he pulled the cage out and set it down. Inside was a parrot, a huge, vibrant, screaming parrot. The bird immediately shrieked at me, wings flapping. Against the bars, I shrieked back. The boss chuckled, calm as ever, as though a crime boss bubble bath bird. Delivery was perfectly normal. What the heck is that? I demanded. Your replacement, he said smoothly. I gawked. My replacement? He leaned down, unlocking the cage. The parrot exploded out, flapping around the chandelier, feathers snowing down like some absurd confetti. The bird landed on the rim of the bathtub and squawked. Mine! 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 I blinked. Did that parrot just... Yes, the boss said casually. It learns fast. The parrot turned its head, stared right at me, and screeched. Mine! My soul left my body. I was being tag-teamed by a crime boss, and a deranged parrot with ownership. Issues. He poured himself another glass of wine, utterly, unbothered, and watched me as if this was the greatest show on earth. The bird fluttered closer, hopping, toward me like some feathered demon, chanting. Mine, with increasing aggression, I scrambled onto the chair, flailing my suitcase like a shield. Get it away from me. The boss smirked. It likes you know it. Doesn't. It wants to eat me. The parrot screeched, then tried to dive at my hair. I screamed, swatting, wildly knocking over the wine bottle in the process. Red liquid poured across the marble like blood at a crime scene. The boss finally moved, whistling sharply. The parrot immediately obeyed. Perching on his shoulder, like some villain's sidekick, he stroked its feathers and said calmly, See? Destiny, even the bird knows. Gaped, panting. You cannot be serious. I'm always serious. You just bathed in bubbles for 2 hours. Deadpan. That was serious too. I wanted to implode. My entire reality had been hijacked by a man who saw no difference between soap foam and fate. Between prime steak hostage dinners and destiny parrots. The parrot screeched, again, flapping its wings dramatically. Mine! I dragged a hand down my face. This was it. My breaking point. My villain origin story. I took a deep breath, glared at him, and said, Fine. If I'm yours, as you keep insisting, then I have conditions. That got his attention. He leaned back in his chair, towel slipping dangerously, and raised an eyebrow. Conditions? Yes, condition 1, no more parrots. Condition 2, I get my own room key. Condition 3, I will not under any circumstances be fed steak like a toddler. The boss studied me for a long, unbearable moment, then his lips curved into the slowest, most infuriating smile I'd ever seen. Denied. I wanted to throw myself out the window. The parrot shrieked again, almost gleefully, as if echoing his decision. Denied. Denied. I dropped back into the chair, defeated, glaring at both of them. A towel-wrapped crime boss and his feathered minion. This was my life now, and for reasons I couldn't understand. A dangerous little laugh bubbled up in my throat, because maybe, just maybe, I was starting to enjoy the chaos. I should have left the chair and run. That was the only rational choice. But rational choices were apparently on permanent vacation. Because the parrot, my unwanted feathered bully, had decided my hair was the perfect target for its claws. Mine! It shrieked, mine! I ducked and twisted, swinging, my suitcase like a medieval weapon. The crime boss watched, utterly unbothered, feeling precariously clinging to his hips, sipping wine as if this was a typical Friday night activity. Stop it, I shouted. The bird ignored me. Of course it did. Finally, in a fit of desperation, I lunged for the bathroom. Suitcase. Hurst! The parrot screeched, flapped, and crashed into the chandelier, sending crystal droplets scattering across the floor like a tiny sparkling apocalypse. He laughed, a full-throated laugh that made my blood run hot and my brain scream stop. I begged, stop laughing at me. I got no sympathy, not even a smirk of guilt. He just swirled his wine and said, "It's entertaining, and I prefer to be entertained." I slammed the bathroom door behind me, chest heaving. Alone, right? Alone wrong, because the man who had declared me his destiny mistake was standing there, dripping. Water and menace, towel falling just slightly lower than modesty would allow. He had followed me. Naturally, I gawked. What? How? Why? He smirked. You can't hide from destiny. I leaned against the wall. Mind, scrambling for a plan. Think, like a normal person, or at least a person who doesn't end up in bubble bath crime boss situations. But before I could come up with a strategy, there was a loud squawk. The parrot had followed me somehow. I heard its tiny claws skitter across the marble floor, and then it landed on my shoulder, ruffling its feathers, and screeching. Mine! I screamed. Flailing, the crime boss stepped, closer, calm predatory, like a cat circling its panicked prey. Careful, he said, it likes you, I shrieked. I hate you, you are insane. Laughed. It's the chaos, he said. Simply chaos keeps life interesting. I glared, chest heaving, trying to process why my life had turned into a live-action cartoon, where crime bosses, prime steak, and deranged parrots ruled everything. You're going to get us. Caught, I said, voice trembling. Maybe, he said softly, and leaned closer, eyes glinting, the towel sliding, slightly lower, and my brain short-circuited. Again, stop, I croaked. He chuckled. Stop what? Everything. I wanted to vanish. Poof. Gone. Anywhere. But here, the parrot squawked again, flapping dramatically. Wings, hitting my face. I ducked, yelped, and stumbled backward. He caught me naturally, his arms wrapped around me, not tight, not soft, but with an intent that made my stomach flip. He held me steady as I struggled, trying to wrestle myself free from the chaos that had somehow taken human form. In a man with tattoos and a towel, I'm not some damsel in distress, said glaring. Up at him. I can handle myself. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, I know, he said. That's why it's fun. I blinked. Fun. My hair was wet. The parrot was screaming in Italian, or was it Spanish? And I had just survived a near chandelier collision. Fun. Apparently, yes, fun. He lowered me back to my feet, hands brushing my shoulders. The parrot perched on the rim of the bathtub, still shrieking. Mine! 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 You're ridiculous, I muttered. Both of you. Ridiculous and insane and absurd. He smiled. And yet you're still here. I wanted to scream again. I wanted to rip my own hair out. But somehow, despite every fiber of my being screaming escape, I found myself standing there, heart hammering, staring into the impossible dark eyes of the man who had ruined my life in the most chaotic, absurd way possible. Then he did something that made my entire nervous system seize, leaned down, close enough for me to feel the warmth of his breath, and whispered, "You'll get used to it." "No, I won't. You will," he insisted. And the parrot screeched in agreement. I opened my mouth to argue, but it dissolved into helpless laughter, because at this point resistance seemed pointless. Insanity was winning, and maybe I was already a participant. I looked at him, then at the parrot, then at the trail of wine and feathered chaos, and muttered, "I can't believe this is my life." He grinned, and yet here you are. My head snapped toward the doorway as another knock rattled the door. I groaned. "What now?" He tilted his head. Company or another surprise? I couldn't even. My brain short-circuited again. He beckoned me over to the tub. "Sit." I resisted, then remembered the chaos from before. Refusing wasn't an option. Not here. Not now. Not in the crime boss bubble bath universe. Reluctantly, I sat. The parrot screeched. "Mine." I glared at it. "No." The crime boss poured himself more wine, slipping back into the tub, water lapping at the sides, foam swirling. I stared, utterly defeated. And then, in the strangest moment of absurdity, he offered me a glass. "Drink." I blinked. I shook my head. He tilted his glass. "Drink." I stared at him, tried to muster rebellion, but chaos had me cornered. I took the glass. Trembling. My life had become a cocktail of absurdity, danger, and unexpected attraction. I sipped. It was strong, red, surprisingly good. I coughed. He laughed. I glared. The parrot squawked again, and I groaned. This was my life now. Chaos. Red wine. Steak-fed hostage dinners. A towel-wrapped crime boss, and a parrot with ownership issues. I was trapped. And somehow, against all logic and survival instincts, I was starting to enjoy it. I should have left when I had the chance. I really should have. But the universe apparently had a twisted sense of humor, and I was now a permanent fixture in this ridiculous hotel room, surrounded by bubbles, wine, and a man whose mere existence was a threat to common sense. The parrot, of course, was still screaming, "Mine! Mine! Mine!" It had discovered my purse and was determined to shred it into confetti. "Stop!" I shouted, diving to save my credit cards. The crime boss didn't even flinch. He was reclined in the tub, towel dangerously slipping, swirling his wine like this was the most normal Thursday in the world. "You're hopeless," he said. Voice calm, eyes glinting with amusement. I growled, "I am not hopeless. I am competent, professional, organized, sane, and every adjective that would convince the universe I didn't belong in a bubble bath, crime boss nightmare." The parrot shrieked, flying at my head. I ducked again, tripping over my suitcase, and landing on the floor in a spectacular heap. He laughed, deep and dangerous, and extended a hand. "Get up." I glared at him. "No." He smirked. "This is fun, isn't it?" "Fun," I muttered, staggering to my feet, hair in disarray, clothes wrinkled, dignity shredded. Fun was having a parrot peck your credit cards into a mosaic while a crime boss drank wine and watched you implode. "Yes," he said, eyes dark and unreadable. "Fun." I wanted to fling the first object in reach at him. The parrot? Maybe the wine bottle? Definitely myself. Probably. Then the room shook. I froze. The bathtub wobbled dangerously, water sloshing over the edge. The parrot screeched. Mine! He barely flinched. Someone at the hotel, he said. Another delivery, another knock. Of course, another knock. Like I wasn't already trapped in this absurd nightmare. I groaned. Who now? Another parrot? A marching band? The mayor of Italy? He didn't answer. He just waved me toward the door. I hesitated. I didn't want to be part of this. I didn't want to go out there. But apparently in the bubble bath crime boss universe, hesitation meant death. Or embarrassment. Possibly both. I stepped toward the door, suitcase in hand, and opened it. A man in a glittering mask stood in the hallway, like something out of a fancy carnival, holding a silver tray with a live lobster. I blinked. He smiled beneath the mask. Delivery for the boss. The crime boss stepped out of the tub. Dripping water, towel barely covering him, and gestured to the lobster. Check it. I blinked. What? He nodded. For dinner. I stared at him. I am not eating a lobster. I don't even like seafood. He smirked. You will? I felt my will to survive wither. The parrot screeched. Mine! I glared at the bird. Not helpful. He grabbed the lobster with bare hands, placed it on the tray, and extended it toward me. Eat, he said. I stared. No, eat, he repeated, voice calm, eyes dark. Dangerous, maddening, I snapped. Fine, I will eat your absurd lobster, but only because I don't want to end up as parrot food first. He smirked. That's the spirit. I sat at the tiny folding table he had somehow procured from somewhere and poked at the lobster with a fork, feeling absurdly ridiculous. He watched. Calm, predatory. Like this was the most normal thing in the world. I sighed. My life had officially turned into a fever dream of crime boss bath time chaos, parrot attacks, and gourmet hostage dinners. And yet, I couldn't stop looking at him. The absurdity of it all. The danger, the chaos. It was intoxicating. I hated myself for noticing. He leaned closer, eyes dark, smile wicked. You're enjoying this. I blinked. No, absolutely not. Yes, you are, he said. Voice, soft, dangerous, confident. I glared. Maybe a little. He laughed. A deep, low laugh that made my knees weak. The parrot flapped its wings, shrieking. Mine! I groaned. The lobster was ignored, and just like that, the crime boss leaned closer, hand brushing against mine as he pretended to reach for something on the table. I panicked. Move! I wanted to shout. Run! But my body betrayed me. He smirked. Relax. I glared at him. Relax. In the middle of crime boss bath chaos, with parrots and lobsters and dripping towels, and he leaned even closer. You like it, don't you? I wanted to scream. I wanted to flee. I wanted to explode. And yet, part of me didn't. Chaos, absurdity, danger, parrot attacks, dripping crime boss towels, and that smirk. I swallowed hard, feeling ridiculous. He smiled knowingly. That's the spirit. The parrot shrieked. Mine, I groaned, throwing my hands up. This was my life now. And for reasons I could not understand, I was starting to look forward to the chaos. I thought the lobster, the parrot, and the bubble bath had reached peak absurdity. I was wrong. The hotel room door slammed open before I could blink. A trio of men in black suits stormed in, faces set like stone, eyes sharper than knives, and all clearly armed with intentions far worse than parrot-induced panic. My first thought, police. Second thought, dead. Third thought, why is my life like this? Theme. Crime boss, who had been reclining in his bubble-laden throne of ridiculousness, didn't flinch, not even the tiniest eyebrow raised. He lifted a dripping hand and waved casually. Gentlemen, Welcome to the party. I gawked. Party? Party? The men paused, looking around the room, the bathtub, the bubbles, the wine, the lobster, the parrot perched on the edge like it owned the place. They all stared like it was a surrealist painting come to life. Who is she? One of them demanded, voice low and dangerous. She? He asked, voice casual. Like we were discussing tea preferences, the one right there. One called out. He stepped forward, pointing at me, but not too aggressively, because I had the sense that in this room, that was dangerous. I have no idea who she is, I stammered, voice cracking under the absurdity of the moment. She's with me, the crime boss said smoothly, standing in dripping water as if gravity were optional. I almost groaned. With him? Oh, absolutely not. The men exchanged glances. You've been busy, he said, smirking. Busy is one word, absurd is another. I flailed, trying to make a run for it, but my suitcase betrayed me, tipping over and sending a cascade of papers, receipts, and what I think were hotel napkins flying across the marble floor. The parrot screeched. Mine? I glared at it. Not helpful. The crime boss gestured at me again. She's staying. I groaned. I literally groaned. The three men stepped closer, clearly not expecting a dripping towel-wrapped crime boss, nor a parrot perched like a tiny judgmental emperor, and yet they halted. He tilted his head. Do I look like I need help? Apparently not, because they froze, eyes wide, realizing that yes, he could literally end them with a look, or worse, with the power of ridiculous theatrics. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. I am leaving. I am leaving. I am leaving. The crime boss chuckled, voice low and dangerous, like he was enjoying a private joke only he understood. Where are you going? I don't know. Anywhere but here. He stepped closer, towel swaying dangerously, water dripping from his hair, close enough that my nose could pick up the faint scent of expensive soap, leather, and pure chaos. The three men stepped back, uneasy. He smirked at me. You can't leave, he said softly. I crossed my arms, pretending to look brave. Don't be ridiculous. He chuckled. No, you're ridiculous, I groaned. Yes, I am, but still. One of the men finally spoke. She's your guest, boss? The crime boss nodded, eyes glinting, lips curling in that maddening smirk. She belongs here, he said. I gaped. Belongs here? I almost lost my mind. The men looked at each other, then at me, and slowly back toward the door. Yes, boss, they said, retreating. Once they left, the room descended into silence, except for the parrot, who immediately squawked, Mine, mine, mine. I threw my hands in the air. This is insane. Absolutely insane. He stepped closer, dripping water, towel clinging like a second skin, and lowered his voice. Yet somehow you like it, he said. I glared. Like it? Like it? Yes, he said softly. You're unpredictable, chaotic, perfectly ridiculous. I opened my mouth to argue, then paused. Maybe he was right. My life was chaos. His life was chaos, and somehow, despite the absurdity, it was exhilarating. I shook my head. Stop it, I said, trying to regain some shred of dignity. He smiled. Never. The parrot flapped its wings dramatically, squawking in agreement. I groaned. I really, truly groaned. Then he did something that made my stomach twist. He reached out, hand brushing mine, not threatening. Not soft, but intimate in a way that made my brain short-circuit. I froze. He leaned closer. I like this, he whispered. I like that you're terrified and furious and somehow fascinated. I wanted to shriek. I wanted to run. But part of me, The absurd, chaotic, ridiculous part wanted to stay. He smiled knowingly, eyes glinting, and the parrot echoed. "Mine," I groaned, flopping back into the chair. This was my life now. Chaos, crime bosses, dripping towels, lobsters, squawking parrots, an unexpected, impossible attraction. And against all survival instincts, I was starting to accept it. He leaned back, towel slipping slightly, bubbles frothing dangerously, and poured another glass of wine for himself. "Drink," he said, offering me one as well. I blinked, hesitated, paused, resisted. Then I sighed, taking it, because if chaos was the new normal, I might as well drink with it. He smirked, raising his glass. "To chaos," he said. I clinked my glass against his. "To chaos," I muttered, voice trembling between laughter, fear, and something I couldn't quite name. The parrot squawked. "Mine!" I groaned again, and somewhere deep down, a small, ridiculous part of me laughed. This was my life now, and apparently I was never leaving. Just when I thought my life couldn't get any more absurd, the door slammed open again. This time it wasn't rivals or delivery men. It was housekeeping. 2 women in matching uniforms stood frozen at the threshold, hands gripping their carts, faces pale as if they had just stumbled into a war zone disguised as a hotel room. I froze too, unsure if I should scream, plead, or faint dramatically. The crime boss, of course, didn't flinch. He reclined in his bubble throne, towel clinging heroically to his hips, glass of wine in hand, as if the arrival of housekeeping was a minor inconvenience in an otherwise perfect night. "Ladies," he said smoothly. "Welcome." I gawked. "Welcome. This is not welcome. This is chaos, and you're apparently hosting it like it's a spa party." The housekeepers blinked. One of them coughed nervously. "Sir, we just came to tidy the room." He smirked. "There's nothing to tidy," he said, voice dripping with amusement. "She belongs here." I looked at him, my brain screaming. "Belongs here? Absolutely not." One of the housekeepers glanced at me, eyes wide, and whispered, "You're the guest?" I opened my mouth to protest, but no words came out, because no words could explain this. Not the parrot, not the lobster, not the dripping towel-wrapped man declaring me his destiny mistake. The crime boss leaned forward, hand brushing my shoulder ever so slightly. "You like it, don't you?" he whispered. I shook my head violently. "No, absolutely not." The parrot screeched. "Mine," I groaned, collapsing into a chair. My dignity had officially left the building. The housekeepers slowly backed away, pushing their carts like they had just survived a hurricane made of absurdity. As the door closed, I let out a long, shaky breath. My life had turned into something resembling a fever dream. And then, of course, the phone buzzed. I groaned. I didn't want to answer it, but curiosity, or perhaps terror, forced me to pull it out. It was my coworker. The same coworker who probably expected me to be at the welcome dinner 15 minutes ago. I hesitated. Explain what? That I was trapped in a bubble bath crime boss's suite, being terrorized by a parrot and fed absurd lobster? No, that would sound insane. I hit decline. The crime boss, of course, noticed. "Someone waiting for you?" "None of your business," I muttered, shoving the phone back in my pocket. He smirked. "It is now," I groaned. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get any more ridiculous, the parrot squawked and launched itself at the chandelier again, sending crystals raining down like tiny sparkling grenades. I ducked instinctively. The crime boss caught the parrot mid-flight, holding it like some absurd circus act, and whispered, "Calm. It's fine." I blinked. Fine. Nothing about this was fine. He set the bird on his shoulder again, dripping water and chaos, and gestured to me. "Sit." I wanted to argue, I wanted to resist, but apparently resistance was pointless. I lowered myself onto the chair, chest tight with frustration, and something else I didn't want to admit. He swirled his wine, eyes glinting. "You're tense," I glared. "I am not tense." He smirked knowingly. "Relax," he said, voice low and dangerous, yet somehow soothing. I took a shaky breath. "Easier said than done," the parrot squawked. "Mine!" I groaned. I really groaned, and then he did it. The thing that made my pulse jackhammer in ways I didn't understand. He reached across the table, hand brushing mine as he poured another glass of wine. Not threatening, not soft, but intimate. I froze. He leaned closer. Eyes dark, lips twitching. "You like the chaos, don't you?" I opened my mouth to deny it, but words failed me. The absurdity, the danger, the ridiculousness of it all had me cornered. Yes, maybe, possibly. He smiled, sharp and knowing, like he had read my mind. The parrot flapped its wings, shrieking in agreement. "Mine!" I groaned again, burying my face in my hands. This was my life now. Chaos. Crime bosses. Dripping towels. Lobster parrot attacks. And dangerous, absurd flirtation. And somehow, against all logic, I was starting to enjoy it. Then the hotel intercom buzzed. A mechanical voice announced, "Room 512. Your evening amenities have arrived." The crime boss smirked. More surprises. I groaned. My life had officially become an endless loop of chaos and absurdity, and I wasn't even mad anymore. Because deep down, ridiculous as it was, exhilarating as it was, terrifying as it was, part of me was curious. Curious what else this bubble bath crime boss had planned. And I hated myself for thinking that. I should have run the moment the intercom buzzed. I should have vanished, slipped into the hallway, and fled into a world that made slightly more sense than bubble bath crime bosses, feathered tormentors, and lobster dinners. But of course, I didn't, because chaos wasn't done with me yet. Before I could even process the announcement, there was a loud crash. Something or someone had burst through the hotel room door. And standing there, framed by the hallway light, was a man I was fairly certain was either a rival crime figure or the universe's cruelest prankster. He wore a tailored black suit, eyes sharp and dangerous, and had an expression that suggested he didn't appreciate bath time theatrics. The crime boss, towel barely hanging, water dripping, glass in hand, looked perfectly calm. "Oh, another guest," he said, voice dripping with casual menace. I blinked. Guest? That is the opposite of a guest. That is a professional, trained, probably armed rival crime man. He stepped forward. Expression deadly. "Boss," he said. "The package?" I froze. "Package? Again?" The parrot screeched. "Mine! Mine! Mine!" I groaned. My brain short-circuited. The crime boss, however, smiled. "Ah," he said. "Just in time. Meet her." "Me?" I wanted to shriek. "No, no, no." He gestured toward me, towel slipping precariously, bubbles clinging to his chest like absurd armor. The rival crime guy blinked, taking in the scene. Dripping towel-wrapped man. Bubble froth. Lobster tray. Parrot perched on the tub. He blinked again. "This is your guest?" The crime boss smirked. "She belongs here." I groaned so hard my face almost hit the floor. The rival crime man glanced at me, then back at him. "And you are?" I opened my mouth to speak, but no words made sense. Because how do you explain being kidnapped, fed steak, attacked by a parrot, and now witnessing a full-blown crime standoff in a bubble-filled hotel room? The crime boss leaned toward me, hand brushing mine again. "You're going to love this," he whispered. I wanted to scream, faint, and run simultaneously. The rival crime man stepped closer. "We want the package. We bring it now." The crime boss chuckled. "Which package?" The parrot squawked. "Mine!" I groaned. I really, truly groaned. Suddenly in the chaos, I accidentally stepped on the lobster tray. It toppled, claws flailing, sliding across the marble like some absurd action scene. I screamed. The crime boss lunged, catching it with one hand, and setting it upright, all while keeping a smirk like he had rehearsed this exact moment for maximum absurdity. The rival crime man blinked. What is happening here? Exactly what I wanted to know. The parrot screeched, diving at my hair again. "Mine, mine," I flailed, trying to protect my head while simultaneously glaring at the crime boss. He caught my wrist gently, yet firmly, pulling me closer. "Calm," he whispered. I glared. "Calm? Absolutely not." He smiled. "Yet I like that fire in you," he said softly. My cheeks heated. I wanted to deny it, to flail, to escape. Instead, I found myself staring at him, absurdly captivated by the chaos incarnate in human form. The rival crime man coughed. "Are you going to fight?" The crime boss tilted his head. "She'll help." I blinked. "Help?" Before I could process, the parrot screeched. Lobster claws clacked, wine sloshed, and somehow, I ended up grabbing the rival crime man's tie and yanking him backward as he lunged toward the boss. "What are you doing?" I screamed, but the absurdity of it all propelled me. He tripped over the suitcase I had carelessly abandoned earlier, sprawling into the hallway in a tangle of black fabric. The crime boss laughed, deep and dangerous. "Well done," he said. I stared at him. "Well done? I just nearly caused a disaster." He smirked, leaning closer, hand brushing mine again. "I like chaos," he whispered. "And clearly you do too." I groaned. "This is not attraction. This is survival instinct mixed with sheer terror." The parrot squawked again, perched triumphantly on the tub. "Mine!" I sank into a chair, chest heaving. My life had become an absurd war zone, complete with dripping towels, lobsters, parrots, crime bosses, and now accidental heroics. He leaned toward me, closer than I thought humanly possible. Eyes dark, lips twitching. "You're amazing," he said softly. I blinked. Amazing? I almost fell over trying to trip a man with a tie. He smiled knowingly, brushing a stray hair from my face. "Absolutely amazing." The parrot flapped, echoing. "Mine!" I groaned again. This was my life, and somehow, against every instinct, I was starting to enjoy it. Chaos crime bosses, dripping towels, lobster battles, parrot attacks, and dangerous, absurd flirtation. All of it. I thought surviving the rival crime intrusion, lobster chaos, and parrot attacks would earn me a quiet moment. A single fleeting second to breathe. I was wrong. Because the hotel intercom buzzed again. I groaned so hard my brain nearly leaked out my ears. The crime boss, naturally calm, swirled his wine and smiled. "More surprises," he said, like it was perfectly normal to receive them mid-bubble bath. I buried my face in my hands. My life had officially turned into a live-action cartoon, and I was the unwilling star. Then, without warning, a new sound joined the symphony of chaos, a high-pitched, panicked voice shrieking from the hallway. "Housekeeping again." I groaned, bolting upright. This was it. I was going to get fired, arrested, or possibly pecked to death by the parrot. 2 housekeepers burst in, faces pale, carts wobbling, eyes wide. They stared at the bathtub, the crime boss, the lobster tray, the parrot, and me. "Sir, we need to..." The crime boss raised a hand. "No need. She belongs here." I blinked. Belongs here. I wanted to argue, but no words survived the absurdity. The parrot squawked. Mine! I groaned, collapsing into a chair. One housekeeper finally stepped forward, voice trembling. Room cleaning. Sir, he smirked. Cleaning is optional, he said. I wanted to scream. Then, as if the universe had a twisted sense of humor, the intercom buzzed again. Package delivery. Room 512. I blinked. Another package. Another absurd mystery from the hotel's twisted supply chain. He grinned. Perfect timing. Before I could process, a man appeared in the doorway, carrying a large, sparkling, golden tray covered with what looked like an entire roasted pig. I blinked and blinked again. He placed it on the floor with a flourish. Dinner, said simply. I stared. Dinner? He nodded, towel slipping slightly, bubbles clinging like absurd armor. Eat, I wanted to protest. But the lobster, the parrot, and the crime boss's gaze reminded me that resistance was pointless. I sat, reluctantly, poking at the roasted pig with a fork. The crime boss watched, calm and amused. You handle chaos. Well, he said. I glared. Handle it. I'm barely surviving, he smiled, leaning closer, hand brushing mine again. Calm, he whispered. I shook my head. Calm? Absolutely not. The parrot squawked, flying from the tub to perch on the roasted pig. Mine, I groaned. My life had officially become an absurdity sandwich with me as the main course. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get more chaotic, a new sound pierced the room. A wheezing, mechanical beeping. The housekeeping carts had collided with the lobster tray, sending the lobster skittering across the marble floor. And somehow, one of the carts had knocked over a fire alarm. Red lights flashed. Sirens blared. I shrieked. The crime boss, utterly calm, held up a finger. Watch. He slipped into action, dripping. Water. Towel clinging heroically. Parrot squawking on his shoulder, and somehow deactivated the alarm with a flick of his wrist. I blinked. I had no words. He smiled at me. Dark eyes. Glittering. You're incredible, he said softly, groaned, burying my face in my hands again. Incredible. I wanted to scream, cry, and run simultaneously. The parrot squawked. Mine! I groaned harder. Then he leaned closer, hand brushing mine again, voice low and dangerous. You like this chaos, don't you? I wanted to deny it. I wanted to run. I wanted to implode. Instead, I muttered. Maybe a little. He smiled knowingly. Eyes dark, lips twitching. The parrot flapped its wings, echoing. Mine. I groaned again, realizing my life had officially become an absurd, chaotic, romantic comedy war zone, and somehow, against every instinct, I was starting to enjoy it. Because chaos, crime bosses, dripping towels, lobster and roasted pigs, squawking parrots, accidental heroics, and flirtation this dangerous. It was exhilarating and terrifying and ridiculous, and exactly where I belonged. I thought I had survived the lobster, the roasted pig, the parrot, and the rival crime standoff. I was wrong, because now, apparently, the hotel itself had decided to join the chaos. The lights flickered, the air conditioning unit groaned ominously, then sputtered a series of alarming bangs. I blinked. What now? Before I could process, the ceiling sprinkler system exploded. A torrent of water rained down, soaking us instantly. I shrieked, flailing. The crime boss, towel clinging like a superhero's cape, stepped forward, hands outstretched, catching me mid-stumble. Calm, he said, voice low and infuriatingly soothing. Calm? Absolutely not. I was drenched, chest heaving, hair plastered to my face, and my dignity had officially drowned. Somewhere between the bathtub and the sprinkler, the parrot squawked, perched, triumphantly on the bathtub rim. Mine, I groaned, lunging to protect my purse from the deluge. He chuckled, dark and dangerous, and held me steady. You're incredible, he said softly. I blinked. Incredible. I was soaked, panicked, and about to slip on a wet marble floor. Incredible wasn't the word I'd use. but my cheeks warmed for reasons I refused to acknowledge. Then the hotel intercom buzzed. Again. Another announcement. Room 12. Housekeeping requires immediate assistance. Groaned again. The door burst open before I could protest. 2 more housekeepers, soaked from the sprinklers, tumbled into the room, carts wobbling dangerously. Eyes wide. Sir, the crime boss waved a hand. Nothing to clean. She belongs here. Blinked. Belongs here. I was starting to question reality. The parrot flapped its wings dramatically, echoing, "Mine." I sank into a chair, chest heaving. Then a loud crash echoed from the bathroom. The bathtub had somehow shifted from the sprinkler. Impact. Tipping precariously. Foam splashed over the edges. Like snow in a blizzard, I scrambled, trying to steady it. But he stepped in first, effortlessly catching the tub with one hand, while adjusting his towel with the other. I blinked. Did he just defy physics? He smirked, dark eyes glittering. "You're amazing," he said softly. I groaned, burying my face in my hands. Amazing. I almost slipped into the tub. Chasing a rogue lobster, the parrot screeched again, taking flight. Wings, flapping against the ceiling lights. "Mine," I screamed, ducking as it swooped near my head. He caught it mid-air, setting it back on the tub. "Calm," he whispered. I glared at him. Calm? No. Absolutely not. He smiled knowingly, hand-brushing mine again as he poured himself another glass of wine. "Drink," he said, offering me one as well. I hesitated, then took it. If chaos was my life now, I might as well sip it. The door burst open again, and this time a hotel delivery boy appeared, arms stacked with balloons. Balloons. Yes, balloons. For the boss, apparently, because nothing in this universe was too absurd. He waved them away with a smirk, then leaned close. "You like this, don't you?" he whispered. I blinked. Like this? I wanted to protest, but my pulse betrayed me. Maybe a little. The parrot squawked, "Mine!" I groaned, flopping back into the chair. My life had officially become a non-stop loop of absurdity. Chaos and impossible flirtation, and yet, despite every instinct screaming at me to run, part of me liked it, because chaos, dripping towels, parrots, lobsters, sprinkler showers, and dangerously attractive crime bosses. It was exhilarating, terrifying, ridiculous, and exactly where I belonged. I thought I had seen the height of absurdity. I was wrong, because the universe apparently had a vendetta against my sense of normal. The ceiling groaned. Ominously, a low rumble vibrating through the marble floors. I froze. Heart hammering. The crime boss, dripping water, towel clinging in a heroic manner, raised an eyebrow. "Worrying about structural integrity?" he asked. Voice calm, unnervingly smooth. "Absolutely," I muttered and glared. Before I could even process the situation, the parrot squawked and launched itself at the chandelier, knocking loose a shower of crystal shards that glittered like a miniature apocalypse. I shrieked, ducking behind a chair. He caught the parrot, mid-flight, holding it like an absurd circus act, and whispered, "Calm, calm." I wanted to scream, claw my hair out, and run simultaneously. The door burst open again. This time, a trio of hotel bellboys tumbled in, carts wobbling, boxes precariously stacked. "Sir, delivery!" The crime boss waved them off. "Nothing to see here?" I blinked. Nothing to see? There was a dripping, towel-wrapped man, a parrot, a lobster tray splashing water, and the faint smell of roasted pig. Nothing to see. The parrot flapped, squawking. "Mine," I groaned, collapsing into a chair. Then the sprinkler system kicked in again, soaking us all. I shrieked. He laughed. "You handle chaos well," he said, hand-brushing mine. I blinked. Handle? I was barely surviving. He leaned closer, voice low, eyes dark. "Yet you like it, don't you?" I blinked. "Like it, part of me? Maybe?" He smiled knowingly. "I knew it," he whispered. The parrot flapped its wings, shrieking in agreement. Mine! I groaned again. Then came the intercom. Another announcement. Room 512. The chef has arrived with dessert. Dessert. I blinked. What could possibly follow a roasted pig, lobster, and chaos parade? Before I could process, the door slammed open, and a chef appeared, tray balanced with an enormous chocolate. Cake! The crime boss clapped his hands. Delighted dessert, he said, setting the cake in front of me. I stared. I couldn't. Even. He leaned closer, hand brushing mine once. More eat, he whispered. I poked the cake nervously, then took a bite. Sweet, rich, absurdly decadent. The parrot squawked, flying over to inspect the dessert. Mine! I groaned, flopping back in my chair. Then suddenly a loud crash. The bathtub, still precariously perched after the sprinkler chaos, tipped slightly. Foam and water lapped over the edges. I lunged, trying to stabilize it, but he stepped in first, catching the tub with one hand, while pouring wine with the other. Blinked. Physics optional, he smirked, dark eyes glittering. You're incredible, he said softly. I groaned. The parrot squawked, perched on the dog. Mine! I stared. The dog yipped. The parrot flapped. The balloons toppled. Confetti swirled. Absolute chaos. He leaned closer, hand brushing mine again, eyes dark. And you love it, don't you? I blinked. Love it? I wanted to scream, but the absurdity cornered me. Maybe a little. He smiled knowingly, lips twitching. I knew it, he whispered. I groaned, flopping into a chair. My life had officially become an absurd, non-stop circus of chaos, comedy, and ridiculous flirtation. Then the dog yipped, lunged at the parrot, and chaos escalated further. Bubbles splashed, wine sloshed, the ceiling moaned, and towels swirled like tornadoes. I shrieked, ducking, flailing, and accidentally knocking the lobster tray into the chocolate cake. He caught both with one hand, while steadying me with the other. Calm, he whispered. Calm? I blinked. Absolutely not. I groaned again. Then, in a moment of sheer ridiculous intimacy, he leaned closer. Water dripping, towel slipping slightly, eyes dark and dangerous, voice low. You're perfect in chaos, he whispered. I blinked. Perfect? I wanted to deny it, but my pulse betrayed me. Maybe a little. The parrot squawked. The dog yipped. Confetti swirled, and the crime boss laughed. Deep and dangerous, wrapping me in a towel hug that somehow managed to be both protective and flirtatious. I groaned, exasperated, flustered, and inexplicably giddy, because chaos, parrots, lobsters, chocolate cake, sprinklers, rival crime figures, housekeepers, bellboys, balloons, dog, and dripping towel-wrapped crime bosses. It was exhilarating, terrifying, ridiculous, and exactly where I belonged. He leaned closer, lips just inches from mine. You're mine, he whispered. I blinked. Mine? The parrot squawked. The dog yipped. Confetti rained down, and the ceiling groaned ominously. I groaned, and somehow, against every instinct, I smiled, because my life had become a non-stop, unhinged, absurd, chaotic comedy romance, and for once I wasn't trying to escape. I was ready to see how far this ridiculous, chaotic, absurd adventure could go, because in this bubble bath crime boss universe, survival meant embracing chaos, and maybe, just maybe, enjoying every absurd, ridiculous, dangerous second of it. The parrot squawked one last time. Mine, I laughed, shaking my head. Mine. The crime boss grinned, dark eyes glinting. Exactly, he said. And in that moment, surrounded by chaos, parrots, lobsters, chocolate cake, sprinklers, rival crime figures, hotel staff, balloons, and a tiny yipping dog, I realized something important. My life would never be normal again, and I didn't want it to be.